The KD Rugby Show. Welcome to this special KD Dockhouse Rugby Show with myself and my host Dave. Today we're joined by two fabulous guests. We've got Nicholas Mew, who his CV reads as professional teacher, amateur writer, scooter rider, drummer, and ambassador for Masters Rugby League. Welcome to drummer, yeah. Welcome to the show, Nicholas.
Thank you very much for having me.
And we've also, Dave, would you like to introduce our next guest?
I will, yeah, because I've known Mark for a long time. This is Mark Illingworth, the lead host of a very popular, long-standing podcast, the Super League Pod. Welcome,
Hi, guys.
Mark.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So how long have you been running the podcast now, Mark?
This is our 9th year.
9?
Well done.
6 down, I was way wrong.
Upside down.
Yeah.
You'd rolled it right, you just put it upside down.
Yeah, that's what it was, yeah. Great to get your views on our show today, starting with yesterday's matches. So we saw the Challenge Cup. There were 3 games yesterday in the Challenge Cup. The first of which we will discuss now, is the women's Challenge Cup final between St Helens and Leeds. How did you see that one, Mark? Did you watch that game?
Yeah, I was at the games. I really enjoyed the women's final. Actually, I was expecting Leeds to give Saints more of a challenge than they've had all year, and they definitely did that. In fact, Leeds were up, weren't they, 8-4 at half time?
Yeah.
They were the better side in the first half. The forwards seemed to be making a lot of momentum. It's just they didn't take enough of the chances, I thought, in the first half when they were on the St Helens line. They took a penalty at the end, didn't they, which was sensible at the end of the first half. But there were spells through that first half where Leeds were putting a lot of pressure on, just didn't quite have the cutting edge maybe to get through that Saints defensive line, and it was the opposite really in the second half, wasn't it? Saints took 3 chances for 3 scores in that second half, and they showed their class. But it was a really entertaining game, and there was the one part of the game that really seemed to swing it for me was when Courtney Hill took that penalty kick at 8-8. I think it was 8-8, wasn't it, at the time? And the kick went just to the left of the post. And instead of it going dead, the Leeds player tried to put it back in field for one of her teammates to maybe pounce on it and score. But she actually took it dead, which meant it was a 7-tackle set rather than Leeds getting the ball back. And in that 7-tackle set, I think it was on tackle 5, maybe, Jodie Cunningham popped up, didn't she, and scored a really strong solo try, leader, captain's try to get Saints ahead, kind of similar to what Roby did in the men's game. But in the women's game, Saints were able to hang on after that point, and really, they're an absolutely exceptional side, aren't they, that St Helens women's side?
Oh, definitely, yeah. It was a great first half, and I think you're right. I think Leeds were good for the lead at half time. They were punching behind the ruck, very sharp, very quick, and making really good yards behind the ruck continually, and getting a bit of a roll on it. And you're right, they probably should have come away with more points from that first half. And you always knew, because of the class and the quality in that St Helens team, that if you don't take these chances, they're going to come back to bite you. And you're definitely right. In the second half, Saints stepped it up, and Leeds were hanging in. And you're right, the breaking point was that penalty kick. If it had gone over, Leeds may have been able to hang on, but once it didn't, they struggled to contain St Helens, and it felt as though that broke the match, and handed it over to, following that try, handed it over to St Helens. They are probably the better team. They probably were slightly better on the day, but credit to Leeds to run them so close. And it was a very, very entertaining game. Almost 6,000, I think the crowd was, which was
5,888 was what they announced as the crowd that was in the stadium, I guess, by the end of that game.
Wow!
But that's a record for a women's game in the UK. So that's fantastic. It's just great to see the building of that sport, isn't it? And we saw sort of three recognizable faces presenting, being the sort of summarizers on the BBC in from the women's game. I never realised quite how short Kelsey Gentles was until I saw her from like 10 yards away. But on top of that as well, there was other women's players around and about that you saw, and you often do at these finals. And people, it's great to see people going up to them and recognising them. I saw Vicky Molyneux, who's an outstanding player at Wigan, but she's injured at the moment, and she was there. And a lady and a daughter went up to her to ask to have a picture taken with her. And I imagine for these, normal people, Vicky's just a teacher, isn't she? Like Nicholas is. And imagine what you'd think, Nicholas, if like some random mum and daughter came up and asked for a picture with you. It might happen after this appearance, but that's what Vicky Molyneux was getting at Leeds yesterday. And I thought that was absolutely fantastic. That just shows the development of the women's game in the last, say, 4 or 5 years since some of the clubs started being branded under their main headline Super League clubs. It's been such a good growth.
Incredible, the growth, yeah, and I'm delighted to see it. And the quality's there as well at those top levels. The challenge for the sport is to get that similar quality throughout all the teams. I think the numbers are growing massively, very rapidly, but it'll take some time for those to catch up with those top levels of the sport. So there's still a lot of work to be done, but the way it's improved over that short period of time is incredible and fantastic to see. And those points you touch on there, Mark, really about the names now. People know the names of these players. You wouldn't have done 5 or 6 years ago. I remember watching Lancashire v Yorkshire about maybe 8 or 9 years ago, and it was down at Thatweath, and there must have been about 30 people watching. And the quality now is come on so much in a short period of time, and I'm really looking forward to seeing where it will go in the next 3 or 4 years. It will just continue to grow. Like you say on BBC, the promotion, the atmosphere looked great, the quality of the rugby was very good, it was an entertaining game, so what's not to like?
It was absolutely great. I mean, my wife watched it and she said, it seems like there's more players on the pitch than normal because they're everywhere. She said, but one thing I noticed more than probably in the men's game is the constant. They do it in the men's game, but they're constantly talking to each other. For each play, for each defensive set, everybody in that team is talking, and the hits that were going in, we were kind of like, proper, really feeling them.
Yeah, well, there's still lots of young players even in these top sides, isn't there? But even more so spread around the league. You see teams like Huddersfield who have got some really talented younger players and stuff like that. But even in these sides, there's some young people, even players like Goldthorpe at Leeds. She's only 20 or 21, but it seems like she's been around forever because she scored a hat-trick in a grand final like 3 or 4 years ago. But so they do still need help, don't they, around by some of the more experienced players. So you do see that. But what has changed as well is the elite players are getting more athletic. I mean, 2 players that make me more optimistic for England in the World Cup is Chantal Crowell for St Helens and Daniel Anderson for Leeds. You saw 2 number 10s playing 80 minutes pretty much. Both of them looked strong and fit throughout. When you're able to rotate those with each other, when they're on the same side in an England shirt, that means we might actually be able to compete with the semi-professional girls that play down under, whereas our ladies are still amateur, even though they're getting much better professional training environments now, which is fantastic for them.
Yeah, and that's one thing that we got when we spoke with Pip Birchall from the St Helens Women's. Yeah, they are amateur. They've got day jobs. They don't get paid for playing. They're doing it for the love of the sport, and for what they give for that just shows the true nature and the grassroots element to our game.
Let's move on to the second game, which was the first semi-final between St Helens and Wigan. And before this game even kicked off, there was a lot of talk because Saints have played Wigan a couple of weeks ago. Saints have been on absolute fire. They've looked unbeatable in some of the games. I've been watching them thinking, how do you approach playing St Helens this year? They're so good. But then they've had some injuries, they've had some people out with bans, and Wigan have slowly been building. And I did get the feeling before the game, I don't think it's going to be as easy for St Helens as many people think. How did you feel before the game, Mark?
Well, as a Wigan fan, I was feeling a bit uneasy that everyone was starting to sway towards Wigan winning this game, because clearly Saints are the standard right now. There's no doubt about that. But then, yeah, of course, we only hear any talk about the Saints pivots that have been missing from this game. No talk about Tommy Luluai or Powell, Sam Powell missing the game at all. But to be honest, it wasn't noticed because, Harry Smith, 22 years old, Brad O'Neill, 19 years old, 3 days ago had his first child was born, and then thrown into a semi-final and performed absolutely, outstandingly for 50 minutes of the game. So that he was on the pitch for. So yeah, it did feel a little bit like we had a chance with Saints having their injuries, though, because Lewis Dodd's so exciting, so great to watch, isn't he? And in fact, if anything, he's made this a Christian Wolf Saints side way more watchable than they were when they were just a really strong defence with occasional moments. They went from being that to being really exciting to watch with Wellesby and Dodd, but Dodd out is a huge miss. And then obviously all the Lomax talk in the week, and will he play, won't he play? And then we saw him play and he was clearly only 50%, if that. So yeah, it was a bit of a ride building up to the game, to be honest.
I did feel as though the disruption in the Saints camp would have more of a negative impact on them than the disruption in the Wigan camp, because you're right, Harry Smith, I've watched him for years now, come through the systems, so I know what he's about, I know what he's capable of, and his kicking game was absolutely outstanding.
It was on point.
Yeah, it really was, and pinned St Helens back. You're getting extra yardage each time through his kicks. And what we saw in the first half is not the way everyone expected it, because Wigan were well on top. How did you see the first half, Mark?
It was incredible from a Wigan perspective. Right from that first towering kick Harry Smith put up, and Young Sim dropped that ball, and Wigan scored off the next set with really good play. Pulling Saints defenders out of their positions is a very hard thing to do, and Wigan did it not too hard in that first set. And this time, unlike Good Friday, we scored. So that was a great start, and Wigan were just well on top. It never really felt like, even when Saints had a bit of time on our line, that they were clicking. Saints were very scratchy, weren't they? Which is understandable with trying to protect trying to protect Lomax, because, and then swapping in with Wellesby when in attack or defence. It does mean you're a bit disjointed, because people are getting into their positions a bit later, especially if there's a quick transition of possession or something. If anything, it felt like Wigan maybe could have scored more. We were just well on top. I've not seen us be that on top against Saints since the 2018 Super 8s. It was amazing.
Confident we get half time then?
Do you know what? Very confident. Yeah, I didn't see the first 20 minutes of the second half panning out how they panned out, especially after we went set for set for the first 3 or 4 sets. And I thought, well, that's us settled back in. That's okay. So yeah, I was confident.
And you touched on a great thing there, because even like for me, watching that game, it has been a while. You think Wigan are dangerous with the ball in hand here. They could score at any given opportunity. It was a matter of when, not if. That's how it seemed. Every time they had a set, they're going to score. Saints are going to have to really be on top of their defence here. They're really going to have to pull all the stops out and bring that A game. And even then, that threat from Wigan was a constant right throughout.
And I think there was, the threats are there with French and Field, and French had a couple of breaks, and obviously Batchelor thought it'd be a good idea to have a lie down on him in cynical style that we've come to expect from Christian Wolf's side. But, you're saving a try there, aren't you? But unfortunately for them, Wigan scored a try on the other side in that set. So it didn't actually help them on the scoreboard. And it wasn't just Field and French, though, that you're expecting to be threats. It wasn't, John Bateman, who's potentially a world-class player. It wasn't even Patrick Mago, who's been a revelation with his offloading game for Wigan, a real point of difference for us this year. It was people like Bibby. It was people, who we didn't necessarily expect it from as much. It was Harry Smith with his long kicking game. It was Smithies and Ellis and people like that with the real fast line speed. And that sort of stuff that really matched St Helens. And I always feel like if you can get through Alex Walmsley ahead, then you're doing all right. And if you can get to the point where Alex Walmsley comes back on the pitch ahead, then you're going to win. But unfortunately, we didn't get to that point in the second half. So then it got a bit more nervous.
Yeah, but it was completely different. And I agree. I thought Wigan were really good for their lead. They looked really good. Different threats, like watching a different team from last year. And with that lead at half time, Saints are too good to let the game go without having a say in it somewhere. But I didn't imagine they'd have such a big say straight in that second half, because Wigan looked out on their feet a couple of times with the role that Saints had. And you just felt as though, it's another. Saints have turned it on when they've had to. Even as good as Wigan are, Saints have turned it on. They've rolled them over, and it'll almost be a routine win for Saints with 10 minutes to go. So how was the first 30 minutes of the second half for you?
To be honest, it was only really that the first 5 minutes was fine. It was then you got that field position, you got that try for Saints, and that was, Hurrell's try. Fair enough, they were back into it. I kind of felt Wigan needed to make a couple of changes, like you say. Maybe some of the guys that have been on from the start in the pack were getting tired. Smithies and O'Neill, for me, I felt we could have whipped them off after that try whilst the conversion was being lined up, and maybe Saints wouldn't have had the same role that they had from that kickoff, running at those same guys. And Saints really did roll up the field, didn't they? And managed to score from what would be controversial if the game didn't end up with Wigan winning it, with the three men stood half a yard in front of the kicker, it seems like, from some angles, but from other angles, maybe only a quarter of a yard in front. But it was a great play, wasn't it, for Makinson to beat Marshall in the air. I think Saints were clearly targeting that anyway, but they got into a really good field position for that try. And then Wigan tried to lift, but Saints were so good at that stage. Roby then pops up with his try, doesn't he? And that was right in front of where the Wigan fans were. I don't know if you got a sense of it on the TV coverage, but obviously it went super flat when Roby went over. But to be honest, within 20-30 seconds, the Wigan fans were up singing again to try and get the team back on it, because you could see Custard lost his head a bit after seeing all the players who we thought were offside at that kick and the referee not checking it. And then, not that I think it would have got overturned, it was too close on the video evidence. And then Bateman had lost his head a little bit as well, hadn't he? Giving away a couple of penalties, and Saints got up the field off the back of those. I think Wigan had lost their heads a bit, but I think when the crowd got back into it, even when we were behind, I think Wigan got more confidence from that. And after that point, even when Saints had attacking position, I didn't feel scared that it was going to be anything routine from Saints. I didn't know where Wigan were going to get points from, don't get me wrong, but I didn't think Saints were going to be scoring any more tries at that point.
I just want to dial back a bit and take you to that the controversial, was it or wasn't it offside? I've looked at this and I've studied a picture. Now, the picture I stood isn't square. No, it's at an angle. But every player from the Saints side on the right hand side, their back foot is on line with Johnny Lomax's back foot. Johnny Lomax is in a kicking position, so he's leaning back slightly anyway. They're in a attacking position. Yeah. So the body is slightly forward, but from foot position in the back foot, they were all on line with Lomax's. The two on the left were clearly onside. But yeah, there's been a lot of debate about that. Was that offside? Was it offside? Bree McKebby came on Facebook on our Facebook page, and he thought it was offside. Now he's a former St Helens player, and he was saying he thought it was offside. So there has been quite a bit of debate. But I just wanted to say that from the angle that I saw, playing devil's advocate, I think that they were onside, pushing it, bodily in front because of their attacking momentum, yes, but the back foot all seems square.
Yeah, I've tried to pause it at the perfect time on every angle to compare the angles, but you can't get them next to each other, can you? But
no, it's difficult.
There is an angle I've seen where it's just before Welsby kicks the ball, and the Welsby's kicking foot seems to be on the sort of above the line, and the other three guys clearly have a foot half a yard in front of the line, but the angle of that kind of is deceiving. So I don't think it would, like I say, I don't think if it had gone up anyway, it would have got overturned from a live call of try, because it was such a close call. It was kind of like was it in the Wakefield Warrington game? There was one for Warrington scored that was similar, I think.
Similar, yeah,
in
yeah.
the cup game. So yeah, there's no real dramas for me. Especially,
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't make any
Wigan Warriors.
difference now anyway. So
No.
I mean, my point has already been made. I think that it's a discussion topic. People are having to watch it back several times, see different angles, and still can't make a decision. So I'm confident in allowing the referee just to view it
Yeah.
in real time and make their professional judgment of what they thought it was at the time. If it's having to be debated this much and viewed this much, it proves that the referee was probably correct.
yeah,
So,
to make that call,
Proves it was hard for them to make a call, doesn't it? So I think and I'm all in favour of more tries in our game. So if it's a close call and it goes in the favour of the attacking side, then I can't be a hypocrite and say I don't like it when it goes against my team.
Benefit of the doubt for Wigan, but not for everyone else. Is that the new rule?
That's not my rule. That's what I'm saying. I'm not a hypocrite.
But like you say, for the referees to make that call in the moment, and that's the difficult thing. That's what we've got to remember. You know, me and Dave get slated about, oh, we're all pro refs and not. We're not. We're just about promoting the game and the sport and the good, the bad, and the sometimes ugly sides of it. So yeah, to make that call in the moment, we just have to go with it. You've got to accept it. You've got to take it on the chin, and it is what it is.
Yeah, it wasn't an egregious error, and I think what I was impressed by, though, like I say, in the last 20 minutes, Wigan got back into shape. They didn't start darting out the line, making silly decisions and that sort of thing. They got back into the defensive shape and they got back into putting pressure on Johnny Lomax, because Johnny Lomax was starting to actually look a bit like Johnny Lomax, wasn't he, for a period in that second half? Yeah. But they started putting pressure back on him, and that led to what we were seeing from him, which was passes not hitting the mark. Liam Marshall nipped him very, very well, to be honest, and ahead of Makinson to get that ball, and went and scored the try. And it was a nervous last 10 minutes as a Wigan fan. I'm sure it was an anxious last 10 minutes as a St. Helens fan. But I don't want to sound cocky or anything, but I didn't think we were going to let it slip at that stage. It was nervy, don't get me wrong, and I was counting down the clock, but I thought Wigan had got themselves back together. They regrouped, got over some of the things that they were falling out of shape with, and yeah, it was just amazing, to be honest. The last minute, watching Saints desperately fling a ball around trying to make something happen, as Wigan had it all covered.
Yeah, I think the coaches will probably be very impressed with the way that Wigan looked dead on the feet, or certainly the momentum being with the other team, how Wigan were able to stay in the match and wrestle it back to being organised. And from that organisation and strong defence, it wasn't. I've watched it back a few times. It wasn't a terrible pass. It was just slightly off and good defence from Wigan. And Liam Marshall pounced on that ball. And when he first picked it up, I thought, well, he's not going to go full length there. Someone's going to get him. They didn't, did they? No one got near him.
The ground, it just seemed to open up, didn't it? It just, the pathway, it was like the parting of the seas, and off he went.
And often you'll see even quick players caught because they're carrying the ball when they're running, and the defenders obviously don't have to, and they can dive for the legs. So you often see attacking players, even very quick ones, caught in defence.
Well, we saw that with Wellesby's amazing tracking back against Bevan French in the first half, didn't we? Ahead of Bachelor Simbin. So you're right. You're absolutely right. And Percival and Makinson were chasing. And I think Makinson thought he had a chance at one point, but Marshall seemed to just pull another yard away. And it just was like, oh no.
But it was a great finish of the game. I like games that are tense. I like them being competitions all the way through the 80 minutes where both sides can win. It makes it entertaining, and I think it's better for the development of those players when they're in tense competitions in World Cups. They've already had the experience of being in those tight games. So well done to Wigan. They're in the final, and they'll be joined by Huddersfield Giants, who ran away with it 25-4 against Hull KR. I actually thought Hull KR would probably win this one. I thought Tony Smith, they can play some great rugby league, very entertaining, against a very process-driven Ian Watson Huddersfield team, and I thought Hull KR would win, but they weren't even in it. You know, I've watched it back again, and I don't know what I thought I'd see second time, as if they'd play better and maybe get closer if I watched it again.
Oh, mate, can you not believe it? I thought it was a great game, and we were in charge, and then the wheels fell off, mate. I don't really know what happened.
And they certainly did. And anyway, I watched it a second time, and it finished up exactly the same score. They got beat again.
But you put a bet on it again the second time.
So, how did you rate Huddersfield performance?
At the game, I rated it higher than when I've watched it back. When I watched it back, I sort of thought they didn't do anything special at all, did they? They just did everything really well. And Hull KR didn't. One thing it felt like watching the game in the first half, I felt like Hull KR were forcing everything, which sometimes you see Hull KR and they do throw the ball around. They're very entertaining to watch as a neutral. You know, they're an enjoyable team to watch, and it's the kind of rugby league that makes you want to watch rugby league. But in this game, it didn't feel like they would. It felt like there was something weighing on them a little bit. So everything that they normally just do naturally, and it's a risk-taking thing and does or doesn't come off, it all felt a little bit forced in this game for me, a little bit harder to even try maybe. And no one was on the same page. Whereas one thing you've got in the, like say, process-driven Huddersfield side is everyone's on the same page. And that's Ian Watson does a great job of that, doesn't he? And he did that again in this game. And every time even you sort of thought Huddersfield maybe were just getting through a set to a kick, they'd have someone hit a ball at 100 miles an hour like Luke Yates, make a break, get a quick play of the ball, and then they were kicking in a attacking position, and it meant Hull KR had to come out from their own 10 rather than maybe getting the ball 20, 30 out and having a chance to spring something. So maybe Hull KR missed Lachlan Coote quite a lot in that way, in terms of calming it down, making it a bit more composed, giving them a bit more confidence in what they normally do, because Huddersfield had all their key men for that. Lola here, Farge, Levi was exceptional, wasn't he? Again, he has been every time I've seen him this year for Huddersfield.
Yeah, I actually, I think you're right there about Hull KR. You watch them sometimes and it looks off the cuff, but it's quite slick, and people in strange positions, picking up different angles, passing the ball on their own line, but people know it's going to come. So you feel as though they probably practice some of that, even though it appears off the cuff. Where in this, people seem to be running ahead of the ball, going left when they should go right. Nothing seemed to flow. And is that nerves being in the semi-final? Is that expectation? Nerves? Is it the disruption with Tony Smith saying he's not going to stay after this season? I'm not sure. I'm sure it did feel and appear to have an impact on the game, and that process-driven Huddersfield, that's going to make you pay for those mistakes, and they certainly did. And they're a very solid team, Huddersfield, a very good team. So let's take this forward then into just a few weeks' time, into the final. I'll ask Nicholas first. Who are you going to go for? Is it Huddersfield Giants or Wigan Warriors?
Ricky Lutelli plays for the Giants, so I've got to go for Huddersfield.
So you're going for Huddersfield. Good choice.
I'd take Lutelli tomorrow.
Yeah, great.
He was a great guy when he played for Toronto. Fantastic with kids and, with the public in general. A great man all around. He and his family. So I have to go with that.
That's a very sensible choice, yeah, and a good reason. Sure. So if we put that question to you, Mark, and you've also got to give us a reason.
Well, Huddersfield did score some really good tries, didn't they? The Lutelli involved in one of them, plucking that kick out of the air and realising Senior was a much faster man, and then the McGovern one. So they showed they can strike from deep as well as the process. But Wigan have shown consistently this year they can score from anywhere at any time on the field. And in a final, I think that might blow a game open. There's more chance of Wigan blowing a game open with the talent they've got. And so I'm gonna just edge towards my Wigan boys and say that I think we'll win. I think we've got the star quality, and I think Matty Pete's brought that star quality together to have a really good team environment this year, and I can't see them having a misstep.
Yeah, I think for me the interesting thing is there will be the coaches, because Ian Watson has that capability to bring the best out of players. I mean, if you look what he did with Salford and where he took Salford and how he turned them around, and again he's done that with Huddersfield, and in those key and big moments he does kind of have that ability, and he's been a bridesmaid a few times, but whereas Pete, he's settled in at Wigan, he is getting the best out of his players, and Wigan are performing, and I think it is down to the players on the day, But I think a lot will come down to that post-match chat in the dressing room as well.
So, who are you going for, Keith?
I will. See, my head's saying. I will go. I tell you what. Yeah, I'm gonna have to say Wigan. Yeah, Wigan.
Why? You give us why.
Why? I think the form that they're in at the minute, the momentum that they've got, and the fact that big game day experience, that's the slight edge that they're going to have over Huddersfield on the day. Huddersfield are going to come in as underdogs, so they've probably got nothing to lose. I think the pressure's going to be on Wigan a little more because they will be favourites. They've got that history, but they've also been there recently and come off second best as well. So I think the reason being is that, you know, what's gone on and who they beat to get there will now put their edge on Wigan.
So I'm actually going to go for Huddersfield Giants. I agree with you really about Wigan. I think they're much improved. They're very good. I think it's a bit of a banana skin though, because everyone's back in Wigan. Everyone can see the improvements that they've made. They can see the desire in the players and they want to win at the Challenge Cup final. And I think Huddersfield are just going to come under the radar a little bit. I think they're better than people give them credit for.
Oh, absolutely.
And more consistent. And I think Ian Watson's experience with Salford will be to the benefit of Huddersfield Giants. So I think it's going to be low scoring. And I think it could easily be just 8-6, 8-4 type of game to Huddersfield. They will definitely have to defend very, very well to keep Wigan out. But I think if they can manage that, I think they can turn them over by just a few points.
They've got to compete for the full 80, haven't they? They've got to stay in that game on every facet of it and match and then better what Wigan can bring.
Yeah. So we'll revisit this after the final and see who got it right.
Well, we're a long way out, aren't we? A few different things can happen, injuries, suspensions, that sort of thing. One thing we've also got is they're playing each other next week. So they're playing each other, the week after the semis. So that's an interesting game 2 weeks out from the final for them to play. When Wigan and Huddersfield played earlier in the season, Huddersfield were missing Levi and Farge, which is a big, deal. But Wigan was still, I think it was round 3 or something. Wigan were still finding their way as well, but Wigan won that game relatively comfortably in the second half. And it'll be interesting to see if Huddersfield's attack will have a bit more about it this time around. You'd expect so, wouldn't you, with Levi and Farge back in? So it's going to be a real test, and maybe the game before the big game might give us some clues.
Do you think that's a nice feeling out process then?
I just think it's weird how it happens. Sorry, go on, Nicholas.
I was going to say that game before the big game, though, would that be each of the coaches trying to say, okay, this might be where they're headed? Could it then be head games on the part of the coaches? Let's try to deceive them. Let's try mixing things up and make them think that that's what we're going to be doing in the actual final. That's why I find those matches to be fascinating, because you're not sure, is this a preview of what we're going to see later on? Or is this all a big front and it's a big deception? And then come the match, there's going to be some fantastic surprise that we weren't expecting.
A double bluff. Potentially a double bluff. Yeah, you don't want to show your cards to the team just 2 weeks before such a big game. You don't want to lose any players through injury, so you may be tempted to rest a couple of players. I think the things that Huddersfield do, though, are quite... because they're very process driven. They don't really hide anything. There's no tricks up the sleeve. They pretty much tell everyone how they're going to play, and you've just got to compete with them on that. So they don't normally come up with too much different, but I'm sure they've got to have discussions before and see if there's a few little extras. They'll do so much video work. They know each other so well from the video work they do all the time anyway, but they'll probably just do a little bit extra, because there's probably more video work on Wigan now with the changing players and the changing playing style, so that there may be some new work, which maybe, Mark, earlier in the season, they didn't know too much about the new...
Yeah, the Jay Field at fullback was a revelation, wasn't he? We didn't even know that he could run anymore. So it's been a revelation. And according to Saints fans, all he can do is run. But it's... I get what Nicholas is saying about the coaches, but like you say, there's a process to what the coaches do. what I really like about these games before games is the individual battles. And you just know that there'll be some matchups that players will be looking to get upper hands on each other. Like Josh Jones will be up against John Bateman. And I think both of those players, in particular John Bateman, if they get a bit of a working over in one game, will want to react. Chris Hill's the kind of guy who'll want to react. So if Brad Singleton or Liam Byrne, who's the most improved player in Super League this year, or Cade Ellis get it up on Chris Hill, he's going to want to react. So that's a really intriguing part of it for me as well. And the individual mindsets, as much as the team and the mind games ideas, it's the individual mindsets for me that's interesting.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to this final very much. So I will be there. I already got my ticket, so I'll might catch up with you there if you're heading down.
Where can we find the Super League pod? How do we get on you?
It's just at Super League Pod on Twitter or Instagram or facebook.com/Super League Pod. We're not as active on Facebook as you guys are. So yeah, if people want to head over to our Facebook page, that'd be good. Get some chat going there. And just search superleaguepod.com and you'll find we put up like an episode blog post every week. So you'll find that every week on that web address and that'll get you to where you need to be.
Brilliant. Well, yeah, absolutely fantastic. And thanks for your time. It's been great to talk to you. And it's lovely to collaborate with another podcast. A lot of people, I just want to put this out there, that people think it's, we're all against each other. We're not. We're promoting a sport. There are certain podcasts out there and certain groups that don't want to entertain the Dockhouse because, we're a threat. We're competition. We're not competition. We're all part of the same family and promoting a game that we all love.
Yeah,
would you agree with that, Mark?
Yeah, I share your guys' videos when I see them pop up on my Facebook feed and stuff like that. I like what you guys are doing. The guys at 4020 Live, big friends of those guys. I ran into Rich Shawright before the game actually yesterday, before the semi-finals. So nice to catch up with him. And Phil Kaplan, I've known for a long time. A lot of time for Phil. And yeah, all the other shows as well. The Pro-Am guys, they do great work, don't they? Because they kind of dip into the community game a lot more and stuff. We all do our different things and we're all part of this together.
Yeah, I think cross collaboration it can only be a good thing. So yeah, that's my little soapbox over with anyway.
Yeah, well, it benefits everyone, as you say. So the more we can work together and help promote the game together and each other, then it's all good. So,
yeah. And we'll put your links into obviously our Facebook page and embed it into the YouTube video, and hopefully everyone will get on and get you out.
Thank you very much.
And well, that brings us to the end of tonight's show. I'd like to thank our guests. Thank you, Nicholas, over there in Ontario, Canada. Mark Illingworth, somewhere in Wigan. Oh yeah, thanks to all our guests. Don't forget, if you've liked what you've seen, please give it a share, give it a like, and if it's on the YouTube channel, please give it a subscribe. We're just sharing the love of the sport. We're sharing our enthusiasm for the game and trying to spread the word of rugby league.
The KD Rugby Show.